Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Awakening with the Girls. Hey, everybody. Shannon Shine here.
And Breezy here.
Really excited for you guys to all be tuning in again for the next episode of Awakening with the Girls. Welcome, welcome.
Welcome, high vibe humans. What up, what up, what up?
Yeah, so today our topic is how to stop making excuses and how to own our actions. And I think this is a really good topic.
Yeah, it is. That's right. It's such a great topic because it's all about embracing our personal stories while allowing them to empower us and not drain us.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just important because there's so many of us that we don't realize we're making excuses or blaming others or other things for taking our own power away, which is kind of our theme of the month here, is getting our power back. And to me, I've caught myself making excuses for everything from wanting to wake up at a certain time or wanting to go a certain place or not go a certain place with people. And it's usually based out of a few different reasons. I personally make a lot of excuses when I feel afraid or afraid of failure in a way. Does this make sense or connect with you at all?
Yeah, it totally does. Like, for example, from my past experiences, just as a survivor of sexual assault, I was making excuses when it came to meeting new people or going new places, in the sense that I was allowing fear to control my movements. And I really had to acknowledge those reasons as to why I wasn't able to make friends. You know, I was just throwing myself a pity party, basically.
Right. I mean, people use excuses to rationalize their actions regarding their circumstances or towards other people or situations. But again, it's really blocking us from what we want to accomplish in life or being able to feel our best version of ourselves. I believe in the last episode, you discussed how you're a dancer and you really love dancing and moving your body. But for me, I've always wanted to be a dancer, and I've recently been able to stop making that excuse since I've brought it to my attention. But for me, I always made the excuse, other people are looking at me, or what if I do something wrong, or just that fear of being compared to other people. And that's another reason a lot of people make excuses, is the comparison of what's going on in people's lives without even realizing it. And people would always be like, oh, just dance, like no one's looking at you. But then the next day, you know, someone always makes a comment of how silly it was or some movement I did. And I'm like, well, I thought nobody was looking at me.
Dancing is like the best form of expression. And I feel like no one should be afraid to dance, and you can't do anything wrong with dancing. So I hereby deem those as excuses. Those are excuses. There's no reason why anyone shouldn't want to dance, because what it sounds like is excuses are things we say to ourselves to maintain a level of comfort. And I've experienced a similar thing. When I went to bars and stuff, I wouldn't drink, but I would dance on the dance floor. And sometimes I would invite people to dance with me, and people would say, oh, no, I haven't had enough to drink yet. And I would always say, why? Because you're just going to make the same moves, just more drunk. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, so just get out there, express yourself. You don't need that drink. You don't really need anything except your desire to express yourself. Yeah. So I'm really excited, Shannon, that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's been actually really healing when I stopped making excuses for myself when it came to dancing, as well as just exploring or wearing clothes that I felt more comfortable in, because it's something else we talked about in the first episode was the way we tame ourselves down or like water ourselves down and don't wear what we want in fear of the judgment of others, or that they may think that we're a certain type of stereotype or we're not businessy enough or sexy enough. And we create these excuses for, oh, that's not fit for my body type, even though it's something that you really find comfortable or just something you've always wanted to wear or do or try.
Now you're touching on something called our personal narrative. And our personal narrative is how we think about ourselves and how we really create the thoughts that create the story of our life. And that really tells a tale about us. And if we want to tell our story, we have to take our power back and really change our personal narrative and change how we think other people think about us.
I love that. It's a good way to release that fear and to, in a way, write your own narrative, write your own story. Don't allow someone else to be the author of your story and tell you what you can and can't do. And by making excuses, that's what we do, is we give that power to the excuse, and we fear anything from failure to uncertainty to feeling unprotected or unmotivated. Like, we have those fears of all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have all these fears that kind of add up to, making us feel like we don't have power. And so we have to remind ourselves of what it feels like to have power. We have to redefine it for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time when I didn't know what power felt like. And when I finally did, it was when I was able to hula hoop and feel safe in my own body and really enjoy every curve of my body and really own that.
Yes, it's important to own your actions. And it's also important, like, once you make a decision to own it. That's part of today's discussion, is like owning your actions. So if you make the excuse to not do something, you may regret that later. And then you have to own that action and be like, oh, well, so-and-so was doing this, so I decided I didn't want to go because they weren't going. But then you might regret it because you might have met somebody else amazing that needed to be a part of your friend group, and you allowed somebody else's decision to affect your decision rather than owning your own choice.
Oh, so true. There are so many times when the group think can sway us to doing something that maybe our heart wasn't into doing. So it's important to really pay attention to your heart and to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Ooh, Star Trek, we love it. Star Trek is big in the Shine Castle. It's something that Suleiman and I love to reference. And they are all about not making excuses and exploring outer space and new planets and new communities, which I think is important, because that's another time we make excuses is, I know when I was younger, I loved to go and be in the community. I would always make new friends, but I had two best friends that were a part of my trio, and they were both very introverted. I was the extroverted one. I was willing to go introduce myself to a new group of people, but they were more afraid. So I found myself, like you said, the group would pull me back, but in the same sense, they would also not be willing to allow themselves to go out. So I would invite them to the party so that they could make friends, and they would be like, oh, my mom said I couldn't, even though that mom was never actually asked. So right. They were afraid of not being accepted, and they were afraid of just not being able to live in that present moment of enjoyment. There's so many times we don't enjoy it.
Yeah, that desire to live in the comfort zone, to live in that enjoyment space. It sometimes does take a lot of courage and effort and willingness to try and fail and try again in order to really gain that level of comfort in an uncomfortable space, right? We have to create comfort where there is none. And, sometimes that means defining what an excuse is for us. Can we define what an excuse is, so much so that we can clearly recognize when we give excuses? A brief example, is that moment when you have to take the trash outside and it's the dead of winter. You probably can think of a million excuses to take it out in the morning. It's too cold. It's snowing. I want to go to bed. I'm tired. We can come up with all these excuses, but it's in that moment that we have to think to ourselves, am I telling a little white lie so I can just stay in my comfortable space right now? And that can apply to so many other things in our life.
Mm-hmm. You said something in one of the other episodes that really stuck out to me. It was, the comfort zone is the danger zone.
Danger zone.
And I love that, because one of my mottos is it's important to get comfortable being uncomfortable and to push those boundaries and to be able to really go out there and to put yourself out there, which can sometimes be scary, but that's how we grow. If we're afraid of failure, failure is unavoidable and it's inevitable. At some point in your life, you're going to fail. So if you're making excuses to try something new, you're not taking the risks and you're not taking a chance and enjoying your life in the day to day, and you're not setting goals for yourself, which makes you kind of seem unmotivated, or I've also seen with clients when they don't set specific goals for themselves, they make excuses. For example, I have a client, she really wants to lose weight. She's been saying she wanted to lose weight for basically since I started working with her 3 or 4 years ago. She just now decided to make a goal when I said, how much weight do you want to lose? Like, let's really dive into this. And she said at least 30 pounds. Within 2 weeks, she lost half of that and was so proud of herself because she had gained it and lost it and gained it and lost it. And she worked really hard and set into her mind what she needed to do. And without that specific goal, her excuse was, oh, I can work out next week. Oh, I can work out next month. I can start my diet whenever. But once you make that specific goal, there's no more excuses. You have something to work towards.
That's so true. Do stuff your future self will thank you for. You know, and that's all about understanding our values, understanding what we want to get out of this physical experience while we can. And it's important to know where we came from, like all of the past experiences that led up to us deciding what we wanted to do with our life. And understanding all of those things can help push us to creating a goal.
Mm-hmm. The goals are really important. And once you set those goals, if you're making the excuses, then you got to own those actions because you set yourself up then for success. And then it's only you holding you back. There's no more excuses after that. You've put it in black and white. You've written down. That's part of what my 5 steps of transformation is all about, is setting the goals and writing them down so you can physically see them and make no more excuses.
That's so true. Speaking of personal goals, it's always been about bolstering, you know, our personal business, because what we want to do is help people out in the universe, help them get healthier. And the only way to reach them is through our social media. And personally, for me, I've been on this journey of trying to create my YouTube channel, remake my YouTube channel, create this podcast, remake this podcast. And recently I purchased a laptop. And I had to acknowledge that I had to purchase a laptop and I couldn't drag my feet anymore. And I had to purchase a certain kind of laptop in order to do video editing. And I had to recognize that excuse, and I had to write it out, look at the facts, look at, okay, I have enough resources to purchase this laptop. You know, I can't keep putting it off and putting it off. I have to make a move. So I set that goal for myself, and then I went out and I did it. But I really had to look at all the facts first. Like you said, you have to lay it out for you.
I mean, and in some ways you were making an excuse for your mental self to be okay buying the computer. Like, my excuse for buying this specific kind of computer is because of this thing. Like, I have to be able to do. And I did the same thing with my Mac. I was like, I have to have a Mac so I can get these very specific programs and have enough like memory and all of the computer things you need. And then my first Mac actually died. So I had to convince myself that it was still worth it. And I made every excuse in the book. But while I had it, it was the most amazing tool to my toolbox because I could connect to anybody anywhere in the world. So then not only are we making excuses, we have to rationalize things. So sometimes there's good excuses, but it's more important to just live in the moment and realize that you as a divine being deserve that computer and that tool to better yourself and others. There's no excuse needed there. It's just accepting that you deserve it.
Oh, that's so true.
That comes into like abundance and being able to accept our abundance. So accept your power. Believe that you deserve the power, and then it will come to you. So you don't have to make excuses for the things you want and need and deserve into life.
I know, that's such a great, that you're right. That is an example of like truly stepping into your power and being like, you're right. I do deserve this. This will make me more powerful and I will be complete.
I found when I stop making excuses, what I need comes back to me tenfold. So here's an example of that. Earlier today, I had a client that had ordered a bunch of jewelry from me. And I made the jewelry and I charged it. I cleansed it. I was really excited to give it to them. But then I started second guessing it, like, cause it was a very personal design. I was like, what if I did it wrong? What if it's not something they like? And a couple days went by and I was like, putting off messaging them, even though I already had it made. And I was like making excuses like, oh, I want to add this other thing to their package, or, oh, they did this thing for me. Cause they did a really nice, basically a boosting of my business and shared information with people. So I wanted to do something special for them. And it was like, I was taking my power away and giving it to these items in fear that it wasn't good enough. So I was comparing myself to others. Well, right before I decided to meet with this person, I was also checking my one account that I had here and wanted to invest in some more materials. And I was a little over budget, and I decided, my business deserves this. I have the money elsewhere. I'm going to invest it into my business. As soon as I stopped making the excuse of, I don't have enough, the same person, I met them, they not only loved their goods, but they invested the same exact amount that I went over in my budget without knowing anything about it back into it. Because I gave into spirit, I stopped making excuses, and I allowed myself to go with the flow and be in the present moment, which we're going to talk a lot about in the future.
Oh my goodness. And the universe just opened up.
Yeah, it was amazing. It's just synchronicities.
Manifestation. Yeah. But it is about staying true to those feelings that you have in the moment to moment situations. And it kind of does touch on like my laptop purchase. When I had a feeling of like, I want to buy that nice coffee, or, I want to go out to eat dinner, I had to think to myself, but I also need a new laptop so my business can go places. And I had to think, and I had to tune into what I truly needed in that present moment. So sometimes you got to set goals, and sometimes you got to make sacrifices for those goals.
It's true. It is important to have priorities and to choose what you spend your money on wisely.
Mm-hmm.
But just know that as a divine being, an abundant being, I've found personally that when I allow the universe to know that I accept it, I think that comes to gratitude, which is like one of my ways to stay in the present moment and to also like stop making excuses, is to be grateful for the opportunity rather than making an excuse for it. Like finding a reason to be grateful for the opportunity to be invited somewhere, even if I feel introverted that day and don't want to go. Like, I'm like, I'm really grateful. And I don't want to make an excuse. I just can't today. I don't feel like it today, but thank you. I'm really grateful. And then you find yourself being open to more opportunities because the universe doesn't see it as you pushing it aside and not accepting the opportunity that it's giving you. Sometimes you might need to make an excuse. It might get you out of an unsafe opportunity or like an unsafe situation, or you may really not have time that day, so you don't want to, and you might not want them to know your specific reason. So I guess in some situations, excuses make sense. But for what I wanted to touch on today, it's like when we're making excuses for not bettering ourselves and putting ourselves out there in a positive way and moving forward in our goals, hopes, and dreams connected to like our power.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because not all excuses are bad, but to all you humans out there listening, you know what excuses we're talking about, okay? It's those excuses that you tell yourself when you know you should be doing better, when you know you should be out there working for your highest good, okay? You know what excuses we're talking about, so you better recognize.
Exactly. Do you have any advice or suggestions on how people can own their own actions and stop making excuses?
Yeah, one of them would be meditation. That's one way to tune into your thoughts. That's part of the first step, is being able to notice when you have a thought pop up and then be able to analyze it and see if it's true or if it's something that you're using to stay in your comfort zone. And then another thing is to test yourself and give yourself a self-care day, because sometimes we tend to push our own self-care to the side in order to be there for others. And we tend to make excuses as to why we can't do a mud mask for ourselves or go out and get a mani-pedi. So testing yourself with a self-care day is a great way to acknowledge your personal excuses while simultaneously taking your power back.
Yes, I love that. It's important to give yourself that time. I feel like that's probably somewhere that I struggled for a long time making excuses, is I don't have time to take a relaxing bath. I have this million things to do on my to-do list. But when I took it and stopped making an excuse, it made those tasks way easier to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my ways to stop making excuses is to stop fearing the unknown and to allow myself to realize, yeah, things might go wrong, but some things can go so right. And the more I make excuses, the more I'm not allowing myself to experience that joy. And even though it can be scary, it doesn't mean that it's bad. Like going back to the beginning with dancing, like being able to put myself out there. Yeah, someone might make a funny comment on me shaking my knees, but you know, like it's bringing them joy too. So it's not really that bad. I put myself out there. And my other thing is to stop blaming others. I was really bad at this growing up because I grew up in a household where nobody took ownership for their actions. Like, even my parentals, it was always like, oh, you didn't take the trash out today. And then it would be, well, no one told me to. And then it was just supposed to be this like unknown thing. Like I was putting the blame on for them not telling me I had to. And they were putting the blame on me for not doing it when really anybody could have. Everyone just wanted to blame the other person. So by playing the blame game, it's giving them power and giving the universe this power instead of just owning it and be like, oh, I'm sorry. I'll do it. I'm sorry that you had to tell me. Next time I'll send a reminder to myself or something like that.
Even taking ownership of things that, you know, aren't your responsibility gives you power back. When I was a server in a large event facility, I would walk through the building and nobody would tell me that I had to clean up those cups or nobody would tell me that I had to clean up that little bit of trash. But I knew that the building would look better if I did. So I took ownership of the trash that wasn't mine and I picked it up. Just the same way that we live and breathe and walk on this planet Earth. And if we walk down the street and see a piece of trash, we might think, oh man, that sucks that somebody littered. But we take ownership of it and we pick it up and we throw it in the proper receptacle. You know, so it's all about taking ownership and of your actions, even when it's not your responsibility, because you know it's for the higher good.
Yeah, so you were accepting the indirect responsibility in allowing yourself to move beyond yourself to take the necessary action to help your community, which reveals this bigger factor of your character and that you're willing to take responsibility for others and to help better them. And you might have thought your excuse was helping somebody else because so many people would have looked at it and been like, you know, I don't have time today to pick it up or to allow myself. But then you're like, oh, the janitor, that's his job. He's getting paid to do that, you know? Like he won't have a job if I don't pick up if I pick up all of his trash for him, but that's just making an excuse. Really would have made his day.
Right. You never know. That could have been the janitor's worst day, and just seeing you help him out without him asking would make him so happy, or her, you know? Because I've definitely been in that situation where somebody's, as a server, carrying a heavy tray and someone went out of their way to open a door for me. Like literally went out of their way to get the door for me. Yes. And that made my day. I was like, oh, thanks. I'm not just a slave. You know?
Those small actions mean so much to people. And it's just really important to take that little bit of indirect responsibility.
So true. Well, Shannon, do you have anything else to share with the High Vibe humans tonight?
I think that we touched on a lot of really amazing topics. I'm looking forward to our next discussion.
Me too.
Cool. Well, I think that if we're going to sign off for the night, I just want to let everyone to remember that it's important to wake up and shine on.
And stay healthy, stay light, and don't give up the fight. Breezy out.
Bye.
Bye.